Welcome to Scorecard Live. Thank you very much, first of all, for coming bright and early on this Wednesday morning. I'm just going to go through a bit of admin, first of all. So if you need the Wi-Fi, the all-important Wi-Fi, just go to Summit Guest. You'll be asked some GDPR-compliant questions, and then you will have access to our Wi-Fi. If you wish to get a copy of the slides, if you text Summit space and your email address to 82228, we will send you a copy of the slides after the event. So for those of you who wish that, there isn't any planned fire alarms, and if you need the fire exit, it's behind you. Please don't use the lift. So we've got quite a lot to get through. We're going to canter through it. There won't be a break. So if you do need the loos are just behind you over there. If you want some more coffee, go and help yourself, or there's some bacon sandwiches that's still left. Headley, our founder and CEO, is going to introduce who Summit are and why we are authorised to talk about this subject. Emily, who's head of Scorecard, is then going to run through Scorecard and the methodologies behind it. Our experts and specialists and analysts are then going to go through the results and the analysis that sits behind Scorecard. And then we're going to have two separate panel debates with our panel, Natalie, George, Brian, and Dave. So hopefully it's lively debate. We want to have, I've got some hard questions for the panel, but I'd prefer the questions to come from the floor. So please, if you hear something and you're not sure, want to ask a question on that, please save your questions to the panel, and then I will come around with the mic and we can get your questions and make it as interactive as possible. So that's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to Headley, our founder and CEO, who's going to introduce Summit. I feel like we need a round of applause.
Good morning, everybody. It's not normally that early that John gets a round of applause. Look, welcome. Thank you for coming early this morning. I've had a question, which is, why are we all drinking coffee in Sherlock Holmes's front room? So let me explain. We moved into our wonderful home in London in the summer, and we pride ourselves on thinking differently. And that's not just a trick. That is actually, for me, something which is an important aspect in business and life. And what we want to do was theme our office after people who have lived in London and changed our lives. So we picked various people, some of who you know, and some of who you've never heard of, who actually thought differently about the world they lived in and made a difference. So, for example, this chap, William Rungay, he was the first man to create the idea of putting coffee on a stand with wheels and wheeling it to places that people walked past. And it turned out he was my great-grandfather. So he was one of the first people to have a mobile coffee stall, and I didn't realize that until we created the office. And there are other places. We've got the music studio, so many great change makers in music and in fashion who lived in London, Carnaby Street, 30 seconds away, and of course literature and Sherlock Holmes. So that's the reason why you were having coffee with him this morning. So welcome to Summit. This morning's an important morning because today we launch the second Scorecard. And Scorecard is a huge piece of work that we've been working on over the last nearly 2.5 years, and today is the second one of those. And John used the word authorize, but I would like to use the word permission. So why have we bothered to create a league table and look at what are the factors that drive profitability and growth in online retail? And the reason is because 17 years ago, people started giving us money. So when I set Summit up, people said, if I give you some money, Headley, how much will I get back? And we said, well, we'll do our best and return as much as we can. And over the last 17 years, people have given us more money every single year. In fact, every week. And we spend it like it's our own. But the problem is, to give any of our clients a return on investment means that there are a number of factors which affect whether we're able to do that. It wasn't just about the fact of whether we stayed up later than anybody else, or we had more keywords than anybody else, or we spent our money slightly more wisely at the right day of the week. It really mattered whether the product was in stock, or it was the right price, or you could actually get to the checkout, or the website loaded on time. And over those 17 years, we've seen a whole number of factors which affect profitability and growth. And we have one simple mantra at Summit, which is this. Our purpose is to make it more likely that people buy from our clients than anybody else. So as the leader and founder of this company, I don't care what we do in the future, frankly. I'm not wedded to digital. I'm a user. But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman. This is what drives me. What can we do more for our clients that will help them sell more? And over the next 2 hours, we are going to share with you the things that we believe hurt profitability and growth. And frankly, let me share something that's quite frank. I can't believe, I look at Scorecard and I can't believe after 17 years that we still see the same problems year on year. It can't be down to money, and it can't be down to time either. And it can't be down to why that people don't know, because we've been through that now. So the fact that people's search boxes still don't recognize misspellings, and people can't be bothered to come and collect the products that you want to return, or websites take 15 seconds to load, or it doesn't render on a mobile phone. You know, those are just basic problems. And I still can't understand why we can't get those right. But ho-hum, we're going to talk about this today, and we're going to quantify them in a comparable way that will allow people to look at what is important to their business. And trust me, we're responsible for all of it. And so many times we get told, yes, but that's not my problem. I'm not bonused against that. What? So I don't know whether most of these problems are down to issues of organizational challenges. I don't think they're technical ones, because we put someone on the moon over 35, 40 years ago. So the fact we still struggle to provide a product feed is not acceptable, in my view. But all we can do is make the point. And so this morning, we have taken the 50 retailers by revenue, and we have shopped them completely from end to end and photographed the whole process, and then asked their customers what they think. So today, you have in your hands the most up-to-date, uncompromising view of what shoppers think about the top 50 retailers and how easy they are to buy. And on top of that, we have layered our view of what makes the difference between profitability and growth. And I know that retail is difficult, but for the reasons, for all of these press clippings, Brexit, people shopping, competition, Amazon, it means that you have to be at the top of your game, ever more than you did in the past. And now, online is completely not a new thing. It's not an optional thing. It's the way we shop. I tried to explain to my son that we didn't have colored television when I grew up, showing my age. He looked at me like I was an alien. But you know, it's just a way of life now. So the things in the report, they're not rocket science. They're not difficult. Let's fix them. I want to play to you a video which typifies exactly what we're talking about.
People who bought olives also bought Chardonnay.
Oh, all right.
78% of people who viewed Chardonnay also bought What to Do When He's Not That Into You.
Well, I'm just wanting to get some olives, so...
Why not buy all three?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't really need them.
It'll give you a total saving of 7 pence.
I think I'll still pass, actually.
Just some wine then.
No, sorry. What? You didn't know. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm not buying this wine.
You sure you want to remove that item from your basket?
Yes.
Why not try something new?
What, and buy something totally random that I've never shown any interest in?
Wilson Cape Memorial mug?
Yeah, okay, I'll take the mug. Obviously I'm joking, aren't I?
It's good, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. So It's absolutely brilliant. I watched that video, and there's another one before it. And for me, it just typifies the last 17 years. There's nonsense that we see every single day. And if we just stop for a minute and was that poor shopper, you would say, why do we do it? Why do we do it? And sometimes, you know, I work with clients and I think, did you ever visit your website? Did you ever shop? Did you? When was the last time you did that? So I'm just speaking honestly now. It's not acceptable if you want to be competitive in business. So we created Scorecard to say, how much better could you be at selling online? We just want to flag it up in a comparable way. And I'm so excited about the second Scorecard. This year, we have learned from the last. We have more points of data. We have mystery shopped all of these retailers. We have photographed it. We have asked shoppers. It is a really exciting piece of work. And I'd like to introduce the young lady, Emily Hakener, to explain our methodology. And Emily is great because Emily is a marketeer. Emily spent her day spending people's money like it was her own. Yeah. So she's a user. She is a practitioner. And she and the team of people that you're going to hear from this morning have shared their thoughts about the things that matter. So I'd like to introduce Emily, who's going to talk about our methodology, the questions we asked, and how did we arrive at our scores. I hope you find Scorecard useful and this morning interesting. Emily.
Hello. So, what is Scorecard? So I'm just going to quickly run through the methodology of what's brought the report to us over the last 2 years. So as Headley said, there's a lot of factors that actually influence a customer's journey. And at Summit, we've actually developed the retail value chain. So it's across e-commerce technology, online marketing, trading, and logistics and services. But actually, to a customer, that doesn't really mean anything. They don't know that you've got a trading team, and they don't know that you're doing any online marketing. They're actually just trying to buy something from you. So these areas align with these questions. So e-commerce technology, how easy is it to buy from you? Can you actually get on someone's website? Online marketing, how close are you to your customers? Does a customer even know you exist? Trading, how appealing are you to your customers? And logistics and services, do you delight your customers? So, as Headley mentioned, this is actually our second iteration of Scorecard. So, year on year, we've actually increased the criteria points. So, last year we had 171 criteria points of Scorecard. We now actually have 289. So that's because of the developing landscape, the digital landscape, it changes all the time. Customers' expectations change all the time as well, so they need to be added in. However, we also got some really great feedback last year, and we've been doing Scorecard meetings for the last year. And actually, we've added that in. So if anyone's got any feedback today on what they think about the report, it would be really great to hear that at the end. So e-commerce technology, we have 88 criteria points. And these look at user experience, performance, and website quality. We then have online marketing, which is search visibility, social engagement, brand demand, and media mix. And then we have trading, so content and promotion, product and conversion. And then customer service, delivery and returns, they sit in logistics and services. So we had a dedicated team that scored Scorecard, and Joe is here somewhere. He was part of this team. And basically, they mystery shopped every single retailer and actually bought and returned a product. And Joe's got some hilarious stories that Alex is actually going to run through later on. In e-commerce technology and online marketing, it's quantitative data. So it's data taken from different sources, data points. Whereas trading and logistics and services is qualitative data, so that's more opinion-based, which is why we used a dedicated team to make sure that the scoring was consistent throughout. We also asked customers what they actually thought. So on page 15 of the report, we do actually have some snippets from our own research that we carried out with 2,000 participants across the UK to actually make sure that what we are asking is what people actually want. Cool. So that's the methodology. If anyone's got any questions, let me know at the end. I'm now going to hand over to Mike Faulkner, our Chief Client Officer, who's actually going to take you through the results, so the exciting bit. Thanks, Mike.
So
Yes, I'm going to do the results. So whilst I'm Mike Fulton, the Chief Plant Officer, I'm also mainly today David Dimbleby, and extending the retail theme. Whilst I'll look at the top line as far as the principal results and league table are concerned, Ben and Alex will then talk about the detail, the key themes that have emerged out of our more kind of in-depth findings. So I think they'll play the Emily Maitlis and Peter Snow roles, and I'll leave you to decide which is which. So to remind and be clear, I guess, as far as the universe is concerned, Emily's mentioned, or Headley has mentioned, that this is the top 50 retailers by revenue, as decreed by our Oracle, of course, who's, I think, in the room, Retail Week. And whereas, important to note, whereas last year it was confined to bricks and mortar retailers, this year we've included, Retail Week have included pure plays, and therefore so have we. And there are some interesting developments on that basis. And I think it's also important to note, and Emily touched on this, that the data depth, if you like, this year is more extensive than last year. So perhaps while we can't make any direct comparisons year on year, certainly where we see clear and evident trends, we'll make sure that through both the top line results that I talk about and then the more detailed diagnosis that Ben and Alex provide, sorry, Emily and Peter provide, then I think it's we'll certainly make those clear. So if we get on to this year's league table, I don't know if we've got a drum roll arranged, but just if you can imagine one in your heads. And also, actually, when I put this up, you'll see that it's not the most legible chart. So if you go to page 4 and 5 of your booklet, you'll be able to see the findings in detail. So if we look first of all at the top 25, I think the big news is that ASOS, as a new pure play entrant, have come straight in at number 1. I'm sounding a bit more like Alan Freeman now than David Dimbleby, but and I think that's certainly indicative of industry trends that we'll talk about in more detail. And a very telling change from Scorecard last year. If we then look at the kind of perennial performance, the bedrocks of Scorecard through its 2 years, Asda and Argos and Tesco, both top 5 performers both years, and I think as far as consistency across 17 and 18 concerned, they are certainly call-outs. If we look at the biggest climbers, pot pickers, Next, who have moved, if we look at the top 5, Next, who've moved from number 20 to 5, Asda, who have moved from 19 to 2, Aldi, who have gone all the way from 46 into number 11, Boots in the bottom half into number 7, H&M from 34 to 16, and Screwfix straight in at really sounding like Alan Freeman now, straight at 24. So I think these are interesting and pretty significant developments as far as these individual retailers are concerned, and certainly worthy of note. And I think when we get into the themes later on, Ben and Alex will both touch on what we think the most significant factors are that have perhaps contributed to this. If we look, and it'll be interesting to see us in the room. If we look at what we term the biggest fallers, but certainly those retailers that have had, in a comparable form, a difficult year, I guess the biggest and most significant is Waitrose from 14 to 42, JD Sports 7 to 23, just at the bottom of the previous list, B&Q, who have come out of the top 10 to number 33, and House of Fraser, who've gone from 10 to 29. So there are some interesting and, I think, general movements as far as the comparable league tables are concerned. Data points, as we say, more extensive this year, but I think reasonable to make comparisons between relative performance. I think one other interesting point to note is the distribution of scores. If we look at last year, top was 76, bottom was 56. This year, top is around the same level, the bottom is 42. So the market is getting more stretched, I guess, as far as relative performance is concerned. I think that's partly to do with data and the depth and the fact that we've been able to apply more scrutiny this year, certainly. But it's an interesting trend nonetheless. Okay, so let's focus for a second on this year's winner, ASOS. And I think what we have here, just to be clear, is we have the ASOS scores by the pillars, if you like, that Emily had outlined as far as the methodology was concerned. And these are the ASOS scores, which we'll touch on in a sec. These are the increments that ASOS, around ASOS's performance against the industry average, which we'll touch on in a second. So what we can see from ASOS is consistent performance across the piece, certainly, and particularly in service, where there are clear 22 points above the industry average, and 84% in anyone's language is an extremely strong performance. I guess they match what you would expect from a successful pure play: strong social strategy, strong in natural search, and strong customer service proposition. And that's certainly in part contributing to their individually strong performance in the logistics and service pillar. And I guess it's interesting to note, though, and we'll come on to this in more generally, relatively speaking, some of the challenges or their underperformance, if you might, but not against the market in marketing. And that's a feature that we've seen through the industry, that marketing has been a particularly challenging pillar as far as this year is concerned. And on that point, if we look at the respective pillar performances, which are these numbers at the bottom, I don't know if everyone can see them, but e-com 68, online marketing 50, trading 68, and logistics and service 62. What's interesting, I think, is that trading was the big winner last year, certainly, and was a country mile to some extent above any other individual pillar. This year, there's more even spread, with perhaps the exception of marketing, which has seen its own challenges. I guess from a trending point of view, then certainly there are developments in e-com and technology, particularly around issues like load speed, basic issues, caching, that Ben will talk about in more detail. Marketing has been a particularly kind of challenging year at a comparative level. We know about challenges in brand search, which again Ben will touch on, and of course a more increasingly complex social environment. And I think that's contributing to a pretty difficult and telling industry average. Trading performs less well comparatively this year. We've seen evidence that perhaps decision-making behavior has become more short-term and consequently price-led, which I think has contributed to a relative decline in or a downward pattern in trading. And then in service, the trend looks positive. We've got a lot more, and it's important, I think, to stress this, a lot more data points in service this year, which has certainly, I think, made a difference. But new click and collect services, which Ben again will touch on in more detail in a second, that's certainly contributed to a relatively strong performance as a pillar around logistics and service. So if we just examine then I won't do that, sorry to reveal early, the individual winners, if you like, in each pillar. In e-com, it's home bargains, driven largely by their strong performance in site speed. If we look at marketing, it's Argos, driven by their strength in search and social. John Lewis, in fact, let's reveal all and put the averages. So what we can see here is you can begin to get a sense within each pillar as to the relative performance against the industry standard. John Lewis performing very strongly on the back of their conversion and cross-selling strength, and ASOS, as we've talked about, their strong after-sales proposition and return service, and performing at 22% or 22 points above the industry average. So relatively speaking, these are the benchmarks, if you like, that I guess that we should all be aspiring to. Ben and Alex will talk later on about what are the tactics and strategies that are important as far as bridging that gap the gap you might face individually as retailers. But I think this gives you an impression in terms of what should your expectations be as a best practice performer within each of the key pillars. So if we just spend a moment, and we're not going to go into tremendous depth here, but we thought it would be interesting for you to be able to make comparisons amongst your own immediate peer group by looking at the data at a category level, which is what we've done here. And I guess the big news is that grocery is this year's big mover, certainly on a category comparison to last year. And I think this is, as Ben will touch on, driven in large part by click and collect and the almost ubiquitous provision of click and collect amongst grocers now. So a strong performance from a category point of view in that respect. And homeware is I guess, conversely, the biggest faller, driven by challenges in marketing and service as far as we can identify. So we have, and just, I guess, to demonstrate that, if we look at grocery and its strong relative performance in logistics and service, and if we look at home and its, I guess, relatively weak performance in both marketing and service pillar. So that is a top-line view of the results, and I think certainly interesting this year that we can start to make correlations between last year and this year from a trending point of view, without it being exact or precise because of the data caveat that I've talked about. But I think it starts to show a direction of travel, which I think is interesting for everybody in the room. And as far as that question of, okay, how do I bridge that gap against the benchmarks in each of those pillars, then Ben, and then after him, Emily, Alex will start to talk about the key themes, the most salient themes that we've identified that we think you ought to be paying attention to. So thank you very much. Sorry, I'll just introduce Ben, actually. He looked at me rather crossly. So Ben is our Director of Digital Strategy. Ben has been at Summit for a reasonably long tenure, over 10 years now. Also has direct experience at Boots and within Eon, and has worked across all of the categories that I've just talked about in the way that we group data. So is well equipped to talk about the key themes at a universal level that are affecting every single one of you in the room.
Thanks very much. Hello, everybody. So I am here to talk about the first two pillars, about online marketing and about e-commerce and the technology for e-commerce. So we're going to dive straight into the e-commerce section, which is how easy is it to buy from you? And interestingly, I think a lot of marketeers think that user experience is the most important component of how easy it is to buy from you. But actually, we've identified that site speed and performance of technology is a absolutely fundamental reason as to why people buy from you. So actually, we, as Emily's mentioned, we have done a qual and quant study. All of our scores are detailed underneath the different areas that we've looked at, and they've been weighted based on our experts' view of the relative performance or priority of those. So we look at website quality, performance, and mobile friendliness within this section, and what are our key highlights and our key takeouts. So we found that nearly everybody could be making improvements in terms of site performance. So every site we looked at, bar two, are not performing against the industry benchmark when it comes to site speed. Not only that, one of the key reasons why that is an issue is how people are caching. Who would have thought they'd be sat in a room at 9:10 and know that they're going to be hearing about caching a website? But actually, it's pretty important, and you should all be going back to raise that with the business. And the other thing that's which is of real importance is mobile usage is increasing significantly, and the share of sales and certainly the share of traffic is increasing very significantly. But we underperform when it comes to site speed in terms of mobile. Not only do we underperform, but we underperform by, on average, 2 seconds across the board. So let's dive in and have a look at those in a bit more detail. So 96% of retailers are losing money because of web page load. Why is it? They looked at interaction from your eyes and they looked at your facial muscles to be able to do that study. They also did a qualitative study to be able to 50% more than those people who were not using, who were using a good website. So the brain was having to work 50% harder to be able to use and interact with that site. They also came away having had greater agitation and stress as a result of using that site. And actually, their number one reason for citing the issues with the site was around site speed. So, the industry has set a benchmark of 3 seconds. Why is 3 seconds important? It's pretty arbitrary, is it? Actually, we found a study which Google did around machine learning. And what they did is they took all of the Google Analytics and they measured the performance of the site speed and they measured that against bounce rate of the site. And what they found was that the sessions where people bounced versus those that they didn't bounce, the site performed 53% slower than those where there was an unbounced website. So actually, site speed was the number one issue as to why people were leaving that site. And why is 3 seconds important? Well, 3 seconds is important because they also found from that study that 40% of people will leave the site if it's not loaded within 3 seconds. So you've paid for that traffic, you've enticed them in, you've got them to come and look at your site, and 40% of those people will leave if your site is not loading within 3 seconds. So that is why 3 seconds has been set as a benchmark. And when we go through the pages that are to follow and we look at the comparative results, we're setting that 3 seconds as our best practice benchmark. And when I say about the page rendering, actually there's 2 components to how quick a page loads. The first one is it visible above the fold for me to be able to start taking in the content? And the second one is around fully loaded page content, which includes usable links, which includes video uploads in the background, which includes all of your site tags. All of this is looking purely at first page load time, so when people can start to use and engage with the site. So what did we find? Oops, sorry. I'll just go back a second. So we took a very good performing site, Zara, and a less performing site, DFS. And I just want to show you how those two compared when we measured them from a site performance perspective. So at 3.9 seconds, we have got a fully loaded site from Zara. It is fully functioning. It's loaded all of that content above the fold. When we look at DFS, it just about managed to load the top navigation bar in that time. And actually, that is a difference between someone who's going to start interacting with the site and someone goes, I'm not sure I can be bothered. So let's have a look at what that takes. This is page loading above the fold. Let's have a look at the total speed of those two sites. Pretty awkward, isn't it? Felt awkward standing up here in complete silence for 18 seconds, I can tell you that. But actually, the difference between the page loading in 6 seconds and 18 seconds is extreme. And if you're sat there in front of your computer with nothing else to do, apart from maybe look at your nails or have a sip of coffee, that 18 seconds for each page that you're loading on the site, I'm not sure you're going to stick around for very long. So actually, the relative speed is very important. So what did we find? We looked at 4 page types. We looked at home page. We looked at 3 category pages, 3 product pages, and the search page. And what we found was that on average, they're performing anywhere from 2 times over what we set as our benchmark. So 6 seconds and up. And actually, product pages were the ones that struggled the most, perhaps because there's most content, the most rich images on there, but actually there's things that we can do there to improve that. If we look at how they compared from a desktop site to a mobile site, then we can see actually people have worked pretty hard at that homepage to get that optimized from a mobile perspective. But where they are still failing is actually on the really important conversion pages, product pages. This is where people are buying, and actually that's over 3 seconds worse from a mobile perspective than it is from a desktop perspective. In terms of the winners, when I said 96% didn't succeed, that meant 4 did. And that's the 2 here, Zara and Home Bargains, are the only 2 that on average managed to succeed within our target, or in terms of the site, the best practice of 3 seconds. And actually you can see right the way down where you've got Littlewoods, which didn't even fit on the scale that we've got, which was 22 seconds to load, when we did that across the board as an average for their site. So you can see the relative performance of those, and 3 seconds to 12 seconds, 4 times slower were the worst performing sites than those best performing sites. And how did that do in terms of for desktop performance? Actually, the top 5 all did pretty well from a desktop perspective. Home Bargains, Zara, Superdrug, Matalan, and H&M all performed just about within the 3 second target. But actually, if you look at the relative performance versus the worst ones, or the worst performers, you can see there's a vast difference. And if we're saying people will leave, 40% of people will leave if it's longer than this, we also know that every second longer it takes, another 7% of people are likely to not stay on the site, are likely to leave the site. So if you look at that compared to mobile as well, you can see, just jumping back, that these are all loading at sort of 10 seconds. Once you start looking at mobile, that jumps up to 15 seconds, and again, upwards of 20% here. So the relative performance between a good performing site and a poor performing site is really extreme. And these aren't people who don't have content on their site. Zara, Debenhams, Amazon all have good content, rich content that needs to be served up real time. So it's not these are serving rich images and these aren't. It's absolutely can be solved. This problem can be solved. So what's my advice? What are the key takeaways from this section? Actually test your pages to understand the performance. How regularly does anybody, there are so many tests out there that you can run. Just type in web page test and you will get 10, 20 results of examples, and go and speak to people about it. Go and raise your concerns with them, and actually then start optimizing the slowest pages. Identify where they are and go and start getting somebody to fix them. The other thing is, you don't have to fix everything. You have to fix and understand the critical path. That is, what is the critical path from the start of the load time to when it is being viewed by a consumer? And how do you understand that critical path, and how do you fix those and make those the priority? Because everything isn't important. It's about understanding that critical path so you can reduce the time from start to finish. So they're my key takeaways. The other really big contributor to page load time is something called caching. Now, a lot of people think that caching is only when people come to the site for a second time, but actually caching is important for all users. There's something called a CDN. Don't know if people have heard of a CDN, but it's called a Content Delivery Network, and it enables content that is static content to be stored more local to the customer. And it means that they're not pushing on your servers all the time. So what that means is there's a lot of your content that can be stored locally so that when somebody asks for it, it can be served up very quickly, and it's not impacting on your critical path that we just talked about. So how did retailers fare? Actually, pretty well. This was one of the biggest and most significant improvements year on year from a technology perspective. 68% of people are now caching their site, which is really good news. However, disappointingly, only 4% are doing it correctly. So people have made really good progress in that, but actually there's more that they can do, and actually some of it is being rendered completely irrelevant. So there's 2 things that people generally fall down on, and that is not having a timestamp or an e-tag on their site, on their cached site, that says, when was that content last updated? So what it does is it says, if that doesn't exist, I don't know how old that content is, so I'm going to go back to your server. So whilst it's been set up for caching, the caching providers are ignoring it. So there are only 2 people who are doing that correctly, and that's Amazon and Aldi. They're the only 2 people out of all the retailers that we looked at who have got it set up absolutely correctly. So actually having having the ability to cache your content, static content, is a very positive thing, but really make sure and just go and ask the developers whether they've got last modified or e-tag headers on their cached content, and that will make a significant difference. So overall, within the technology section, who were our core winners? I think we've seen the slide, but a key summary here. And who performed less well, could do better. So the next section I'm going to talk about is online marketing and what we have seen from a marketing perspective. We looked across 4 different areas. We looked across brand and brand performance. We looked across social media. We looked across the media mix. And we looked across and looked at search visibility. So what were our key takeouts from that? Well, 56% of retailers saw a decline in their brand performance. Now, actually, this isn't as bad as it sounds, because overall growth across retail, across the 50 retailers we scored, was up by 1%. But 56% saw a decline. We're going to touch on that again in a minute. 72% of brands have too high a reliance on natural search. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is 45% of their traffic is coming from natural search or more. So therefore, actually, as a overall mix from a content perspective and from a marketing perspective, the view from our experts is that that's too high a reliance on natural search, and they should look to change and realign that balance to be much more evenly spread, using and getting more traffic through direct and social activity, as well as perhaps some paid channels. And then the last one is actually from a social perspective, we could be doing better. And actually, we're going to touch on that and identify some of the areas where we think we can improve performance as well. So what do we mean by brand decline? So this is saying year on year, how has your brand performed? Are we seeing within natural search and paid search? So are people still searching for you as a brand? What drives that? What's important? What do we think is what do we think good looks like? Actually, we think it's really down to 3 key things. One is ensuring you've got a brand awareness, and you are creating awareness through the investment in offline and through perhaps display campaigns online to actually raise that awareness. And have you got the right balance? The second one is having a real appreciation. If you are not a pure play, but you are a bricks and mortar store, having an appreciation of the importance that bricks and mortar has on your online performance. And we're going to look at that in a little bit of detail in a minute. And then the last one is around brand sentiment and ensuring that your social campaigns you're reacting in a timely way so that people actually can become brand advocates for you. So, where performed well, where performed less well? Actually, health, beauty, home, grocery all performed quite well above average. Where we saw decline was around fashion and sport, and electronics. And actually, we're going to just take a bit of a deep dive into this fashion and sport area, because it's not all bad news there. So, JD Williams, we saw a 38% increase in terms of brand activity, brand demand, brand interest over time. So you can see actually the spread is quite significant. We've got 4 or 5 retailers that perform well within fashion, and actually quite significant that perform less well. And actually, if you have a look at the ones that struggled, actually Arcadia is a bit of a theme. The Arcadia group's a bit of a theme that comes out that in terms of people that could do better. So let's just have a little jump into JD Williams and see if we can identify why that performance increased. So we've got 2 years worth of data here in terms of search visibility data that we've taken by week, and we can see that we have a significant upward trend. We've got a lot of spikes in there. So let's have a look at what those spikes are. Actually, what we can see is they had 2 relatively significant campaigns. This is a multi-million-pound on and offline campaign, which drove significant uplift in performance in terms of the autumn-winter campaign, and they also had a spring-summer campaign that also had an impact. So actually that balance and understanding the importance that brand campaigns can have on your demand and how people perform is really important. So what does that look like? Actually, if we say they rose by 38%, this is our 38%, this is our average. And where we look at where those performed, then we've got what was a relatively against the average. They were performing below their average that they set, you know, their 38%. And when they launched the campaign, they saw a significant improvement. And again, when they launched that autumn-winter campaign, you can see that they were the strongest weeks of growth when comparing them year on year. So the brand campaigns had a really important impact and role to play through the year of growth that JD Williams saw. We also saw some others where we saw some very positive impact. The range, Home Bargains, Screwfix, and Dunelm. What do they all have in common? Actually, they all had a significant increase in store openings over the year. So actually, how can you utilize those store openings to harness not only the additional traffic you're going to get to your retail stores, but how can you utilize that to help and enable and drive that online? And when we look at some of the brands or retailers that didn't perform quite so well, we can also see the adverse effect of that. So Habitat and Sports Direct perhaps had a few more store closures, and actually they performed and struggled within our brand interest area. So so I think those things are all really important components that have played a role in the brand interest. But there's another very interesting development that we've identified this year, and that is the way people search has changed. And the way people search has changed because the technology has changed to support that. So if you now start to type in your results into either your mobile phone or into a desktop, you get presented with some automatic results before you go to search. And they are to direct you to the nearest store if you're on a mobile, and actually also to direct you directly to the website. So these do not appear as a Google search result. So there are a lot of retailers who are saying, why is my natural search gone down year on year? Why is my brand being impacted? And there's a question that says, is it because of this change in functionality? And what role does that play? Well, we identified that that was the case, and that actually up to 50% of your brand search traffic can be being impacted by this technological change. So when people are starting to ask the questions, which is, why is my natural search down? Why is my paid search brand down? It's not necessarily because your brand is declining, it's that the way people are. So what are the key takeaways here? Understand the value of online and offline marketing to ensure that you're creating brand demand, and perhaps consider creating local campaigns around store openings and store closures from a digital perspective to offer them alternative ways to shop. So if the store is closing, it doesn't mean that they have to stop shopping your brand. There's campaigns around where your other nearest store is, but actually give them alternatives. Perhaps organise some offers and promotions around different delivery options for that local region. The next area and the final area that I was going to touch on was understanding social and social performance. So what makes good social performance? Actually ensuring that you're using social to amplify your activity, your media, or your content that you've already got. Ensuring that you're publishing at times that are relevant to the customer. And I think probably the most important thing is identifying those moments that matter for a consumer, the moments that matter around understanding and identifying their key passions and harnessing key events that happen, that are perhaps static events or external events to the customer, but actually they provide relevancy. And the other thing, the last thing is around actually ensuring you are responding and engaging with those customers in a social way. So what did we find? M&S, very strong performance across the board, and we're going to come on and look at an example there. From fashion retailers, however, they have a huge opportunity that they're missing. They have 2 million plus subscribers to their Facebook page, but they're not utilising and not making the most of the opportunity. They have got very low engagement rates. Our average is nearly 0.2% engagement, and we've got some fashion retailers that are performing at 0.02% engagement rate. So actually, how can they be doing more to improve their engagement and interaction with their consumers? Brands are utilising YouTube. It's definitely a trend we've seen this year. Much more people are producing video content, but again, they can amplify that. They can make more of that opportunity. There's some great content out there. How do they showcase it? And then Instagram and Pinterest, I think, have become much more comparable to Facebook in terms of demand. And whilst they aren't there yet, they've definitely shown a year-on-year increase. But as marketeers, we've not embraced that. And that's probably down to time and money. But actually, they are becoming more and more important and more comparable. So one to consider for the future. So who did well? Actually, grocery shone, department stores, and as I said, if you look at the relative performance of fashion and sport, it really showed an underperformance there. Let's have a look at an example. So JD Sports. We've got some posts here. This one, all in one day. This one was posted 3 hours ago. You perhaps can't read it. This was 5 hours ago. This was 7 hours ago. This was 9 hours ago. This was 10 hours ago. And this was 12 hours ago. So actually, we've posted 5 times in a day. Not necessarily a bad thing. But when you see what's the content about, it's about product. It's about product. It's about product. It's about product. It's not very engaging, actually. And when you look at their relative number of interactions they've had, 9 likes, 8 likes, 29 likes, 50 likes, it's not engaging customers. They're bored with it. So actually, whilst they might have a good following, there is zero or very little engagement with this brand. And if you have a look at somebody who's doing well there, like we said, Marks and Spencer's, and actually they've embraced and understood their customers and what they're looking for, what their passions are. New year, new you. They've really engaged and thought about fresh being a new theme. They've thought about redecorating your home. They're bringing imagery in that's not just product related. They're actually bringing their products to life in terms of lifestyle shots. So really looking at how they can motivate and get customer engagement. 8,500. So instead of 8,500 interactions, 11,500 interactions. This is a brand who's doing it very well and getting great brand engagement. You look at the product imagery, it's completely different. Again, if you have a look at it from a time-based perspective, they're looking at key events as an opportunity to talk to customers about what's relevant to them. Chinese New Year, actually time-based activity based on weather. Valentine's Day, Pancake Day. They're creating content that's themed and aligned with key events. It's a simple approach, but actually they are getting the engagements. 7,500, 900, 13,500 interactions. So the experience of JD Williams versus M&S are extremes apart. They're poles apart in terms of that level of engagement that you can get from producing the right content. So we touched very quickly, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, is on video. Actually, Boots are doing pretty well. They're doing a really good job at producing video content. They've got 300,000 views on this image. They've got a lot less on some of the others, but they're doing a really good job in terms of producing content. But actually, how are they amplifying that within their social space? Not really. They are talking primarily about offers. And wouldn't it be great if they were amplifying that content, which is really engaging through to some of their social channels? It can't be that hard, and actually they're missing a real trick because the hard bit is producing the video in the first place. So actually they've done very well, but they could definitely do more. So what's our key takeouts there? Actually, developing a content strategy that's aligned to your customers' passions and to key events, and potentially looking at some of their pain points and how you can help them eradicate those. And the second one is about improving discoverability. It's one we've talked about before, but actually how do you amplify it? You've got a great platform of hundreds of thousands of users, but how do you engage them and how do you entice them into engaging with your content? So that's it from me. I think not quite. We've got some of the winners that performed well in this area, and some of those that performed less well. But actually, I think I'm now going to hand over to John, who is going to host and run the panel session. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to welcome up our panel of retail specialists who are going to just quickly introduce themselves and I suppose any immediate observations of things you were surprised by. And then I'll open the floor for questions. We'll do this for sort of 5-10 minutes and then we'll go into the second half in which Alex is going to go through the second half of Scorecard. We'll then have another panel and then it'll be coffees and networking and you'll have to go back to work. Right, so if you'd like to come and grab a seat, please. Yeah, you sit there. Just introduce yourself, and let's do any immediate observations, and then we'll open the floor.
Hello, I'm George MacDonald, Executive Editor of Retail Week. I've thought that loads of really interesting stuff there, actually, particularly how some retailers that if you looked at in the round, you think might not be doing well, or on the other hand, doing great. I thought when you get into the detail, there's so much room for improvement, which I think at the moment is vital because the retail environment is pretty hard fought. I don't need to tell you with the squeeze on people's disposable income, but I won't say any more now. I'll let the others.
On now. Hi, I'm Natalie Berg. I'm an independent retail consultant, and I'm spending most of my time looking at retail trends with a particular focus on e-commerce. I think what stood out for me was around mobile, because I see mobile playing a pivotal role in retail. I'm not sure if this is on, but it's okay. I see mobile playing a pivotal role in retail in the future, not just for pure e-commerce transactions, but also bridging the gap between online and in-store. And I think what we will see in the future is an acceleration in the convergence of physical and digital worlds. And I think that really came out in the online marketing aspect, where we saw that actually having a physical presence is becoming really important for those traditionally pure play retailers, as evidenced from, Amazon, for example, and a number of other UK retailers like Birchbox and Misguided and Boden, for example. So I think that will become more important in the future.
Good morning, everyone. And it's mobile, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, my name's Brian. I'm Insights Director at TCC Global. I think, some really fascinating stuff again. I'm on BT broadband at home, and a page load time of 22 seconds is an astonishing aspiration for me. So I look forward to seeing that soon. But I think what really came to life for me during that particular section was all around social. And I think there's a huge gulf between the retailers who are using social in the right way towards those who are using it in a very transactional, kind of robotic fashion. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. There's some brilliant retailer accounts out there like Iceland. Whoever does the Iceland Twitter account deserves some sort of prize or medal, because they're genuinely engaging. They're not only addressing problems, but they're also exploiting opportunities to engage with other brands. So they're absolutely ripping the Mickey out of KFC yesterday, offering to deliver chicken to KFC to cover off the obvious shortfall at the moment. But it's all about not just, but you look at some other retailers, and WH Smith, which is comforting to see, is quite near the bottom of the ranking. One of very few retailers who's exactly replicated the in-store experience on the internet. But if you look at the WH Smith Twitter feed, it's a constant litany of badly spelt firefighting, with people who are wondering where their orders are or why their shop's closed an hour early. Whereas you look at Iceland, you look at the discounters, oddly, are also superb at this, Aldi and Lidl, just really genuinely engaging in a positive way with shoppers. And I think lots of retailers can learn from those very human approaches to social, rather than this, as we saw with the JD Sports example, this kind of robotic content, product-driven stuff, which doesn't really engage. So, yeah, for me, social is only going to get more and more important as a genuinely human way of interacting with shoppers, because despite all of the advances of e-commerce and the supposed demise of stores, I think actual interaction with proper human beings is still very, very important, regardless if that's face-to-face or through social media. So I look forward to lots of retailers really raising their game in that way.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm Dave Trolley. I head up the online marketing activity at Summit. So I've contributed to the second pillar that we just talked about, of the online marketing element of Scorecard. I apologise for my accent in advance as well. So Brian might be able to help out a bit later on for me as well. I think the big thing that surprised me, and it compounds the online marketing element, when Mike talked earlier that actually retailers are failing in that stream, is actually it's the e-commerce tech part that Ben talked about first. And I go back to when I first started my e-commerce degree 17 years ago, and it was all about 10 seconds as being the site speed benchmark. And ultimately, we're still seeing people failing at that today. We're obviously seeing a lot more mobile traffic as well. So 60-70% of traffic is driven through mobile. And basically, we're not catering for that audience. That audience is time poor. They're on the move. So effectively, to make sure that site speed is optimal for that audience is important.
Thank you very much. I would like to now quickly just get a couple of questions from the floor. And we can also, as Ben was the analyst for those pillars, if you want to ask Ben anything particular, or if you wanted to challenge anything, we can also pull Ben in as well. So who would like to pose a question? Anybody got any questions they want to? If you could also introduce yourself as well, that would be very good.
It's going to do with... No, it's okay. Cool. I'm Dan Bowden from eMasters. I'm just intrigued to understand how, in your scorecard, how other marketing channels like email, website experiences, it could be other channels like SMS, in-app messaging, how that affects the scorecard and how that could essentially help bump up the scorecard for other brands, where that fits in, that type of thing.
Can everyone hear me? If not, I can shout. I'm quite loud anyway. Actually, that comes off much more in our logistics and customer service components. It was quite difficult to score that as generically across the marketing areas because you're obviously being targeted based on different messaging from an email perspective, and people who scored didn't necessarily naturally become pregnant women overnight to be able to get that targeted message. So we did cover off quite a lot of SMS and email within logistics. We did look at it within marketing, but actually signing up, getting the responses back and getting targeted communication actually is what CRM is all about. So because we didn't necessarily receive it, didn't necessarily mean that activity wasn't going on. So it was scored, but it was down-weighted compared to the overall mix from a marketing perspective.
Actually, just following up on that point, is there not a case for sort of weighting things like email better? Because we're all hearing that personalisation is going to be the next big thing, and that we've got to be really, really technically good at personalising what customers are looking for.
100% agree. The scorecard takes an outside-in view of what's happening. So all that we can do is score what we see. We can't score what we don't see. We also do another piece of research called a navigator product, where we will go into a retailer and do a deep dive from within the business to understand how we can help them engage more. And that's absolutely where we're looking at email, CRM strategy within that component. But it's far harder to look at that from an outsider looking in, because you're not getting all the sequence messages and understanding what that sequence is. But if you're inside the business and looking and helping guide them, then you can do that. So we can do that on an individual basis through our navigator.
Any others? I've got one more question, I suppose, which was from the retailers, I suppose, that were doing poorly. And I can give you a couple of those examples. So we, who were big fallers, we had DFS, JD Sports, House of Fraser, New Look. Are there any surprises for the panel in there? or are there examples of things they should be doing better?
I think in the case of retailers like House of Fraser and New Look, and it was a theme that came out on one of the slides, there was one slide where Arcadia dominated it. So you think about those three businesses, they're not actually doing that well, full stop. All of them have got fundamental challenges, whether it's, what should a department store look like these days, through to, whether the product is resonating with shoppers. So in that respect, I'm not surprised to see some of those names in there, because they've got some fairly basic questions to answer. So I think it makes sense that their problems should be replicated online. In some ways, it's a bit surprising that House of Fraser has fallen down so far, because at one time it was a real trailblazer in online and in multi-channel. They were trying all sorts of experiments, and I think that's another point that was mentioned, but they need to be able to constantly experiment, to find out quite quickly what's working, and equally, if you're trying something out and it's not working, to stop and do something else, and not to waste any more time on it.
Just to echo George's points, really, I think, if you look at some of the structural challenges in the market, in those retailers in particular are struggling. They either have too much physical store space, or they're not relevant to their customers anymore, particularly in fashion, where actually we're increasingly opting to spend our money on experiences instead of new clothes. I think there's some fundamental challenges, and I think the sector is incredibly competitive right now. So I think, in the case of House of Fraser, for example, where we will probably see store closures, or at least them scaling back, downsizing the physical locations, then naturally, it's e-commerce isn't the priority at the moment, which is unfortunate. But I think, again, it just highlights just how competitive the market is right now.
Yep. Just a quick build on what Natalie said there is, it does surprise me. I think Hedley mentioned this at the very outset, is that one of the big challenges, and Natalie alluded to this, is just getting people out into stores, into high streets. And you look at lots of different retailers now, and the footfall and traffic metrics for their stores are under constant pressure, if not declining, which for me would mean that e-commerce optimization and online marketing optimization would be top of my agenda, because lots of people are choosing to shop on their mobiles or at home. So I share Summit's and Hedley's frustration that this isn't being rectified or being remedied. As you said, 17 years ago, there was a certain benchmark that retailers are still not actually hitting. So while clinging on to the store-based activities, any multi-channel or brick-and-mortar retailer, I think, should be really absolutely prioritising this side of their customer experience. And it, hopefully next year when we reconvene, there will be some genuine step-change improvements in some of these, what seem to me a Luddite to be quite sort of basic expectations for the online shopping experience.
And I'd say as well, from an e-commerce technology point of view, I would expect some of the pure plays to be performing much better, because from a multi-channel point of view, you'd say that 5 to 10% of sales are coming from their digital store. So potentially the focus not being fully on digital is that people are finding it hard to get the right balance. But from a pure play point of view, you'd be expecting them to focus on the website, the site speed, all those components that Ben talked about earlier. So it isn't, it shouldn't be something that the digital specialists are kind of ignoring, really.
Yeah, can I just add one thing? I think the sort of marketing and connection with customers points are really emerging strongly. There are certain retailers who don't feature at all here, for the very obvious reason that they don't sell online. Primark would be one example, a great success. But what's interesting is that you've got Aldi featuring on the list. It's fundamentally really a bricks and mortar business. But it and Lidl and Primark to a degree are doing things like digital marketing, engaging on Twitter and things like that really well. So even for companies where bricks and mortar is the absolute cornerstone, excuse the pun, of their business. There's a lot that can be done on the wider e-commerce front, especially the marketing side.
We have one final question, and then if we we'll get back to the main event.
Yeah. Good morning. My name's Paul Parkinson. My business is Synergy Automotive. We're an online vehicle leasing business. I've got a question about automotive online retail, but I just wanted to say I live in Harrogate. It's a beautiful spa town, and the high street is dying. River Island, Topshop, they're actually moving out of the town. They can't make any money. So the bricks and the clicks and mortar piece is very interesting. In my business, we operate clicks and quality. So we aligned our business with FIFO 3 years ago, and we're working very closely with that. I just wanted to ask the panel one question. We partnered with KPMG as our business advisors 3 years ago, and they actually see us as a tech platform rather than a vehicle provider or a service provider. Does the panel have a view on automotive retail online, and could we see any expectation in terms of automotive retail from a pure play perspective? We are one of businesses that our main competitor supplied 17,800 vehicles last year without a single physical vehicle in stock.
Anybody want to take up cars? Right, Dave. Tony, do you want to take that? Tony, this wasn't staged, by the way. So Tony's actually our head of automotive, so he happens to be in the room.
I'll come to the front. Hi everybody. So I'm Tony. I've worked for Summit for 16 years now. So I've been on the journey, on the retail value chain journey, and we actually set up a dedicated team, a dedicated channel within Summit to answer your question. And I think the answer is it's not about technology. It's about business transformation and business change. And we're quite clear on that, where we can build tech, but the tech has to be means to an end, and the means to an end has to be about either selling more cars or changing the margin. Is that an answer, or is that the answer to the first question?
I think the other thing we found is trying to, and this applies to physical retail and car retail, it's about what does the customer actually want. So where does the customer actually want to absorb the content, engage with your brand, and then ultimately transact? And we should be giving the customers what they want. So whether they want to choose to do it online or do the research online and then go do a test drive, or whether they want to complete the whole transaction online, we should give the customers what they want. Whether that's a car or a dress or a suit or whatever that is, we should be giving the customer the choice and putting them at the heart of the process.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say is it's definitely about the multi-channel, because when we started off, we were helping people to sell CDs, and it was pretty you could disconnect online and offline. With automotive, you cannot do that anymore, and we've realized it's the ultimate multi-channel experience, so you have to have multi-channel touch points, but in the realization that people probably won't use them all. So that's quite a bit of a mindset for a digital person to get into, which is, I'm going to build a perfect online journey, and actually most people's going to ignore it and just do little bits of it. Exactly. So it's almost, bear in mind we come from 5 decimal places of spreadsheets and ROI. Actually, I think having full digital touch points for an automotive manufacturer is almost a brand requirement, not just about selling cars.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
And can we have a quick hand for the panel, and then we're going to get... And I'm going to introduce you to Alex, who's our head of trading at Summit, who's going to run through the next couple of pillars. There you go.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Golden Square, our home. It's good to see you all here. I'm going to talk about the last 2 pillars. Are you appealing to your customers, and do you delight your customers? This is about trading in UX and delivery and customer services. We'll start with trading. We looked at 3 areas: content promotion, product and conversion. And content promotion about the site and the search, on sites, navigation, social engagement inside, and how you really project yourself to your customer. Product is all about the product detail page and the experience. Do retailers present their products in the best light? And conversion was all those tactics and techniques from landing on a page, through the basket, to the checkout, and getting someone to make the purchase. This is one of the biggest areas too where we changed the scoring. So we had 138 data points compared to 88 last year. So year-on-year scoring is a bit more tricky, but there are some themes, as Mike suggested, that we can pull out later on. And trading scored really high in the overall pillars, as Mike alluded to, both this year and last year. And also, the content and the conversion area scored highest out of trading. So I was a bit surprised to see that product is again, a slow point for the retailers. I keep pinching myself. These are the top 50 UK retailers, and they should be doing better, I think. So we'll go into some of the highlights or the headlines. We still believe there's a third of £1 billion being left on the table from poor online merchandising and those techniques. And 1 in 5 of the top 50 aren't using reviews on their websites. And that's come down from last year. It was a third. But still 20% of people don't give customers the confidence in their service or their products. And also 20% of these retailers don't want feedback on their performance, either operationally or just are they doing a good job. And lastly, you can see down here, only 40% of the top 50 retailers are doing a good job with the basics from photography and imagery. And that's quite shocking. So I sit here a year down the line thinking, why not? I mean, this is easy, isn't it? Online merchandising and photography, simple things to fix. And I think, well, do you know what? They're probably not. And they're probably very midterm things. They take investment, it takes time, and it can be quite difficult, people and tools. And it's a lot easier for retailers to manage their stock and react quickly by promoting and discounting. We've seen in the last year more retailers promoting more often and discounting more deeply than ever before. So we'll dive into photography. Why is photography important? Well, you're all aware of the concept that people eat with their eyes. And if you would come to my house, you'd get an average-looking dish probably that probably tastes really good, but you wouldn't get that feeling because you think it looks quite average. If you went anywhere in Golden Square, you'd get a dish that looks amazing, and it could taste average, but you wouldn't think that because it looks amazing. And online retailing is no different. It's a visually engaging sport. So getting photography right is really, really important. It sounds better, doesn't it? Really important. If you get it right, you can increase your conversion rate. You will definitely increase your product to basket rates. You'll give customers more information that they need to make a purchase. Get it wrong, it's the difference between someone buying something or easily leaving the page. And this is what we found. 5 of the top retailers do not have good imagery, and that's good imagery suitable for a Mac Zoom functionality. 10% don't have 4 or more basic images. I'm not asking for much. I'm asking for good, clear product images showing the product's benefits cut out well on a white background. There's nothing really advanced about that. That's come down. That was 20% last year, and it's 10% this year. That's an improvement. 74% aren't using 360 or video imaging. Video imaging, we've touched on before, is a really important part of our culture nowadays. We consume video vastly more than before. And 25% of the grocers use 360 photography. These are the ones that also do homeware. So we're talking Tesco Direct and Aldi. What are we looking for? We look for 6 high-quality product images. That's not a lot to ask. Look for them to demonstrate all the key usabilities, the controls. If you think your product's worth selling, then photograph that. Clarity on size and color. How many times do you see a product detail page with a color swatch as a filter? And you go on the color swatch, and the product comes up a different color to the swatch. I mean, what's that effect on conversion rates? And then 360 spin and the videos. And also putting imagery on models. You know, no more flat imagery, no more wrinkled products, no more mannequins. Make it look lifelike. Apologies if you've seen this slide before. This is a really good demonstration of how imagery is important and fit for purpose. When we do Scorecard, we measure fit for purpose. And this is broccoli. It doesn't need 360. It doesn't need a video image. It doesn't really need 4 images to show you what it is. It's quite functional. Sainsbury's do it with a needs and convenience way, and it's exactly what you'd expect. But Ocado show it like this. It's instantly better. This is eating at my house. That's eating in Golden Square. But it's more visually engaging. People get into it. You can cross-sell products from it, add rich content, and it really gets the point across that imagery matters. So here's some good examples. ASOS, big imagery, big bold imagery, no flats, no mannequins, really detailed on the model, accessorize the products that you can then go in and cross-sell, upsell later on. 2 times max zoom, fantastic quality. On the mouse on the desktop, you can go in and out 15 times. So really, really have everything you want to see from the product point of view. Excellent mobile. And they have a catwalk video showing the products on the person so you can get the feel of it. You can't zoom in, but you can pause it, and it's 8 seconds long, and this is across the piece. That's outstanding. Apple, a different proposition, bold, big imagery of a beautiful product. That's £350. They let the imagery do the talking. It is beautiful, and it's technically advanced, and they show the technically advanced bit by any techies in the room. It's not me. You can get the grips and bridge the gap in beauty and technical brilliance. And then as you scroll down the page, and he's on the mobile or the desktop, this is an automatic spin that shows you the light coming off the edges and the curves, adds to the beauty. And they also introduce the video as well, not for catwalking, but for you can't hear the product online. You can only hear it in store. But it demonstrates how the acoustics work in your room. You can visualize that product being in your living room. Another one I like, and I showed this last year, is Halfords. They've only got one image of a £25 car seat, but it's a great quality image. They've got a fantastic 360 engine. You can zoom in 4 times and have the product at any angle you want and get all the detail. There's also a video again, a how-to video, and that's really good. And it shows people how easy it is to fit a car seat. I've got a young daughter, and I hate fitting car seats in and out of cars. This gives you the confidence that it's easy, and you go and buy it. And why are Halfords good? It's because they use the same functionality on a product that's more expensive. Just a few more images. So they really love their product, and that's a great thing. Bad examples. So pets at home. This is a terrible example of photography and UX. This is a £300 bird cage. Very big, lots of things to show, and USPs. But it's one image, and it's really poor quality. When you zoom in, you get a pixelated image, and a bit like this, and the pixelated image of the special delivery. But what does that mean? So we'll look at product description. How many times do you see that? Lazy merchandising. No reviews, but it can get available for home delivery. Is that different to special delivery? I don't know. If it wasn't pets at home, you'd probably leave the page. But the other thing is, if you owned this, every single one of you owned this, and your bird died, and you were going to sell it on eBay, you present it better than that. One extreme to the other. This is Harrods. 3 images, front, back, uninspirational model image. Lots of good USPs for why you should buy this £2,500 jacket. But they don't show any of it. They don't give you anything about it. Now, perhaps people come here and they know what they're going to buy, and that's the expectation. But I'd argue that if you could sell 100 more in a year, that's a chunk of change that's worth having, isn't it? And this is the sector split. Electronics lead the way. You saw Apple there. I think they scored about 90% in this section. Health and beauty, I'm not surprised. It's a very visual category. Fashion and sport down the way, and grocers with Sainsbury's bringing up the rear with broccoli. Who scored well? And who scored less well? So cross-selling and upselling is still something that bugs me, and people don't do it very well. It's ubiquitous in your bricks and mortar life. You go to the bank, and they'll try and sell you a credit card or a loan. You go to the garage for fuel, and they'll try and sell you a bit of chocolate or an LED or a phone charger or something. And they do this because it works. Not like the video we saw at the start of here, but most people buy it. And in e-commerce, it's worth up to 30% of online revenues. And I wonder why people don't do it enough. A long time ago, when I joined the retail industry, 100 years ago, it was the preserve of product managers and category managers. People really knew their stuff in quite a black art. Nowadays, there's an abundance of AI and machine learning tools that can do it for you. Some need some management and logic, category level, and some go right down to personalization from a person level. So there's no excuse really to do this better. We found that 60% of the retailers are not doing the basics. And by the basics, I mean just 4 alternative products that are relevant, in category, and available. A quarter of the retailers aren't doing anything at all for this. 40% encourage people to buy the look or accessorize. the others don't. And I think that's pretty criminal. And 3 of the 8 grocers do not apply any of the merchandising they're famed for offline, online. So we look for good in AV builders. Batteries, you get a toy, add the batteries. You buy a hat, get the scarf, complete the look. The minimum before I said, humanize the page with other people also you may also like, not just related products that makes you feel like they're trying to flog something that's not relevant. Small ticket repeater, these small items that you can put in the basket journeys, they perform 20 times better than any other online add-on sell. Pre-pack bundling, relevancy, and with a real UX and CX at the heart. Who's doing it good? Well, you can't escape ASOS. They put alternatives here for all the same color, all the same category, all the same price. You can buy the look. Everything on the product image, you can buy jeans, even down to 7 pairs of black socks, which I didn't see on the product shot at first. They introduce user-generated content as well. So these are people who've bought a £40 jacket, liked it so much they've sent something in, and that's going to give a customer confidence that if they think it's good enough to buy, then why don't you buy it? And on mobile, again, a seamless experience as you'd expect from someone like ASOS. Probably best in breed for cross-sell and upsell, and 30% of their revenue is down to this technique. A television set, £550, big consideration purchase. Amazon show warts and all other alternatives, and they don't really care whether they sell this television. Some of them are higher priced, some are lower priced. They just want to sell you a television. From all the reviews, they put the user in control. They feel like they're in control to make a purchase. They also introduce the pre-pack bundling here, and this is a great example with the television and the bracket. If you've ever bought a television for your wall, I did it a while ago, and can I buy the right bracket? Will it fit the thing? Well, the stress is taken out of me here. And here, they offer lots of other customers who also bought the item. So the question then is, not should I buy a bracket, but which bracket should I buy? And I'm going to go with this one, £14.90. It's quite cheap, it'll do the job, upsell made. I used this last year, but it's really important for me now. And from a UX perspective, this is a £300 camera. A very technical item, and technical items can make people nervous. The way they language this is our experts recommend you this bundle. So putting expertise into a technical thing, which gives users some confidence. And they also start you off with something and give you a discount. But what's really cool is you can build your own bundle on top of that. And the more you put in, the more discount you get. So rewarding you to increase that AOV. It's an example of not so good. Now, Debenhams were pretty awful last year, and this is the better example. Good photography. People also this is a petite black sleeveless knee-length dress. Also in the range, another petite black sleeveless knee-length dress. And if you put some weight on recently, a plus size knee-length black dress. And if you want to style your dress, now if I bought a dress, I wouldn't want to style my dress with some grey trousers. Style with grey trousers. Or a grey skirt. But if I did feel the need to style with grey trousers, I'd be pretty cheesed off that they're all out of stock. Pretty poor example. You remember curries? Our experts recommend. If this was style with other fashion workwear, that would make sense. But none of this style with includes a handbag or a pair of shoes. Completely missing the point. Topshop. A great picture, very quickly. Why not try? Nothing relevant at all to what you're looking for. I think the video made that very, very clear. And you look at the sector scores. So electronics running away with it massively, but their product range lends to very good and very easy cross-sell and upsell. I was surprised that health and beauty was so low down. I think, again, the product range is quite ready for and easy for cross-sell upsell. And grocery bringing up the rear again, which is not surprising. They do have the technology for online ordering, which can easily help you make recipes, so they should use that more often. Who scored well? And who didn't score well? Harrods. Pets at home, again, didn't score very well. Okay, do you delight your customers? So, a really important piece to the scorecard, and we did later I'll talk to you about is the mystery shopping, which had some pretty good results. surprising results. But we check customer service. Do you do as you say you'll do? Is it good enough as a best practice? Same for delivery and returns. And for quite a few years now, delivery's been a real battleground for retailers to win in the space. And I could also order from Amazon now, and before I finish this talk, something will arrive in the lift. And that's really, really good if that's what I want. But if I want a box of wine, I live in Harrogate, like the chap over here, I want it to arrive on Saturday when I'm at home, not in 15 minutes, and not tomorrow I'm down in London. So the speed for me is out of the question. It's about convenience for people. And it's more about that what I want, when I want, where I want it type of shopper. And customer services too I think has been a bit of a sort of a distant cousin in terms of a battleground for loyalty. And it's something that's going to change and should change. It's still easier to get someone who's already a customer to buy from you than to acquire a new customer. And if you do make something go wrong, it should be easy to resolve and fix this. That's how you can gain loyalty. 92% of retailers offer click and collect service. This is up from last year in the mid-80s, not a surprise. 13 of the retailers offer subscription services, which is significantly up from last year. Now, 8 of those are grocers and Amazon. The other 5 are fashion retailers, ASOS, Next, Jacamo, JD, and New Look. Really good way of buying loyalty. This is from our own study. 83% of the people we surveyed look at the returns information before buying. So 4 out of 5 of your visitors, not customers, will see if you're any good to return to and get confidence in terms of buying from you. 8% don't offer a form of click and collect. What's interesting in click and collect is Asda recently put a click and collect pod in the Trafford Centre. They haven't got a store in the Trafford Centre. This is on Trafford Park, a little way away. And 100 years ago when this started, click and collect, it was more about driving footfall to stores to try and get more products sold and get some awareness there, other than convenience. And Asda have made it a real convenience now, going to a high footfall shopping centre and not having the benefit of the footfall into their store. So back to the last section, it makes it really, really important if you're doing this to get the merchandising right, so you capture that cross-sell opportunity at the point of order, not at the point of click and collect. You can read the rest here. What was surprising was when we did our consumer test, that 2/3 were using SMS messaging on delivery in flight, which I thought was quite poor, when customer communication in this instance should be king. So last year we mystery shopped, but not to the extent of this year. And we've done it this year. It's been quite exciting. We shopped, this is what we did. We shopped, well, that's not strictly true. We didn't buy from DFS. Buying a sofa wasn't part of our test plan. We did buy from everybody else. First 2 weeks of November, to avoid any peak period, we also had a £500 budget. And that was for, basically £10 a retailer. But when we try and return it, how does a retailer react to a new customer who's a very low-value customer? Mix of click and collect. We recorded every touch point, every email, every phone call, every text message. And we photographed every single delivery, how it came, open the box, in the box, what came with the box, branded content, returns labels, and the product quality. And then we tried to return the items. And there's a chap over there, handsome chap at the end next to Headley, Joe Hendy's team, who did this exercise. And it's thanks to him that we've got this information. We think, and quite rightly, we're one of the most advanced, if not the most advanced, e-commerce country in the world. We've been distance selling for such a long time before e-commerce that we should be good at this stuff, and particularly solving people's problems. And I thought that we'd have 2, maybe 3 issues returning the product. But 27% of the people we tried to return to gave us problems, gave us a runaround, to and fro post offices, couldn't get things, disjointed customer service centres, it was a real blow-away stat for me. And also, but most importantly for me, is if you're difficult to return to, then you're difficult to shop from. And that's straightforward. So winning this and getting it right is really important. Almost everyone delivered on time, which you'd expect from the top 50. But 1 in 3 over-packaged products significantly. We've all seen that before when we get things done. A quarter of the retailers included branded content or bounce backs, which means 3/4 didn't bother to brand their content or try and encourage the consumer to come back. This is interesting. We were charged by 6 retailers for returns, and why not? It cost to return things. But these items were under £10, and the charges were from £3 to £22. Wix tried to charge us £22 to return a hammer. That cost less than £10. But it was free to do it in store, and the store was 11 miles away. Subsequently, Joe's got a hammer by his desk. And six of the retailers get it, and they refunded us without returning the product, so they get the true cost of returns. And 40% refunded either very, very slow or late. And this is a bugbear of mine. If you say you're going to do something, deliver on it. And if you know you're not going to do it, then tell people it's going to be later. If also you can take money very quickly, let's give it back quickly. Give the customer that sense. It's that business again. ASOS. These were the best from our consumer test. Easy to order from, delivered on time. We were communicated through the whole process by email and text. Packaging fit for purpose, hat in the bag, very tidy. Great branded content, and the returns was really easy. A form in the box, 2 ticks. Tick to exchange or refund, a tick for the reason code. And the return came very quickly. The refund came very quickly. We were notified when the refund came. And Argos were very good too. Argos, really strong branding, no wastage of packaging, a little bit less in terms of branded comms inside there. Arrived same day. We were encouraged to go on the phone rather than any other form of contact. But the people on the phone were very, very friendly, super friendly. In fact, Joe's guys said that it was a pleasant experience returning the item to Argos, which is slightly different to ASOS, which they said set the benchmark for customer experience. And examples of not doing it very well are Dunelm. I mean, they've just got their half-year results out, and they've sold some more stuff, lost some more money, and their online sales have gone up by 36% to 18% of their profile. If they're going to do this, they need to change their minds quickly to continue that trend. It came really poorly packaged. Such a huge waste of packaging, and over bubble wrap. Didn't cover the whole product. No real branded or bounce-back content. They had one touch point to contact. One touch point. That was an online touch point. And when you engaged that, you opened up the channels of call center and email. But it took 3 days to get a response from them. And the average amount of contacts per return was 4.9. These guys were 5 email, but each one was a day in between. Really hard work. But it gets better than that, because when we got an authorized return, they sent us a label, put the label on the packet, went to the post office. The post office couldn't recognize the address. So we took it back to the office. Joe's team rang up the Dunelm guys, and the customer services center said, I'm not sure what we can do to help you. Why don't you take it to another post office? So Joe's team took it to another post office. And they didn't recognize the address, but they sent it somewhere on the same trading estate, and that was good enough for us to get our refund. It's a weird story, but if that's happening when people are returning this stuff, and the other key thing, there's no feedback loop for this. They don't want feedback. So they're not going to change the operation. Really, really poor example. And it's in the top 50 of our country's retailers. But they're not as bad as Home Bargains, who won in technology. We ordered a duvet from Home Bargains, and this arrived at the office. And if you didn't know that TJ Morris owned Home Bargains, you'd think you got the wrong product. Especially when the box says Disney Princess Toddler Doll. I'd have given this back.
What's the other item you ordered, Alex?
I'd have given this back. Very confusing. No returns information in box. And again, only email content. 4 days to get a reply. And we were to and fro for about a week and a half to get this problem sorted. No feedback, no returns. Really, really disappointing, Joe. So what we found was that 2/3 people offer email channel for customer services, and I think that's not enough. People may elect to do it because it costs to manage. 90% offer a call center, which I think is really good. The human touch is really important. Only 1/3 have got live or virtual chat, and only 20% push a social channel that people use social all the time because they know they get a response because it's monitored. 70% notified us when refund had been actioned, but no one gave a bounce back fix. No one said, sorry, had a bad experience. Here's a voucher off this category next time, come and do it. And 15 of the retailers didn't communicate that they refunded us. That's a good thing to give you money back. It's a good reason to communicate. These are the ones who scored well. and the ones who scored not so well. But that would normally be me, but I want another 2 minutes of your time if you don't mind, because doing this exercise, we realized with the photography element, a real topic and probably a genuine boardroom topic right now. So this is CSR and connecting with your customer. So I'll go here, straight here. These are images that you've probably seen a lot recently. It's very, very publicized. This is a plastic bottle in the ocean, a port or anywhere with the rubbish that's predominantly plastic. This whale here depicts how much plastic goes into the oceans every minute. And this is obviously the iconic picture from the Blue Planet of the baby blue whale struggling with a bucket stuck in its mouth. And just to put some numbers around this, they believe there's 5+ trillion parts of plastic in the ocean right now, and that 90% of ocean and seabirds have got plastic in their bellies. Hands up here who like seafood. I like seafood. If you eat seafood a lot, every year you're likely to ingest 11,000 plastic particles. And every year, we dump 8 million tons of plastic into the ocean. For context, that's 5 full grocery bags for every foot of the world's coastline. It's a real issue. It's a real issue for retailers too. Because Nielsen last year did a study and found that 1/3 of all European shoppers choose to buy from retailers that are socially and environmentally responsible. And they believe there's a 1,000 billion euro opportunity for those people that will make their case clear, both in terms of packaging and in terms of what they're doing, awareness. 53% of UK shoppers feel better buying from retailers socially and environmentally responsible. And that number goes up to 78 in the US and north of 80 in Brazil and India. And 2/3 would rather buy a product of lesser quality or efficacy if it came from sustainable or environmental responsible retailers. So the question is, you probably can't see the question, but how many retailers know their customers' beliefs? I don't know. But here's an example of what the top 50 sent us. Wastage, box in a bag with padding. This is Harrods. This is Harrods. Really careful packaging. The box lined with bubble wrap, the product covered in bubble wrap and infilled with bubble wrap. It was a tin of tea leaves for UK delivery. Box in a bag, in a bubble wrap in a bag. You can see, you get the picture. You've seen this before lots of times from Amazon, no doubt. A box that you can put your holiday clothes in and the book you've bought. But there was a winner, and this is Zara. This is a £10 garment that came in a box that's perfect for size, no plastic, tissue paper wrap, looks luxury, but our boxes are made of boxes with a past. #recycling. If consumers, by these studies, are going to make decisions on loyalty and brands in retail based on environmental, Zara are winning hands down. And everybody else needs to understand or try and understand how connected they are with their customers. So my 3 things to leave you with are 40% of retailers only do the basics right with photography. So I get it's difficult and it's taking investment, but challenge buyers, designers, suppliers and merchandisers and try and fall in love with your product. Because if you're passionate about your product, these things won't be an issue. 1/3 of retailers don't cross-sell or add value to customers. Most of these are probably multi-channel retailers, so just join the dots between multi-channel or offline, online. It should be pretty easy. And lastly, over half of the consumers in the UK will buy from an environmentally and socially responsible retailer. Go back to your businesses and ask if you're connected to your customers. Because if you're not, this time next year, we might not be reviewing you. And that's it.
Thank you, Alex. Could I ask our panel to come back up? And again, if you want to ask any specific questions, we're going to just get the panel's take on the points Alex raised. And again, if you want to challenge Alex on any of that, feel free. So I'll just pass over to George, and I suppose if you pick out the things that struck a chord with you.
I think people always, learn from the best. I'm not surprised how well ASOS has come out of your findings, and you think about being joined up. So I know that ASOS's target is to answer a phone call from a customer within 30 seconds, an email within an hour, or any social media query within 15 minutes. So that's the sort of bar that's being set. The other things I think you take away from ASOS, so that sort of sense of authenticity, the sort of as seen on me thing, which I think is going to just become more and more important. And again, actually, you increasingly see coming through from them to pick up on your final point, the sort of sense of being a good corporate citizen with their Fashion with Integrity program. And then it's interesting to see some of the luxury retailers not doing that well, like Harrods. I think the big challenge, and you can see what's difficult about it, but equally there are so many opportunities, is to create a brilliant an equivalent experience digitally as you would get if you go in that amazing store.
Thanks, George. Yeah, I think for me what was really interesting, well, lots to say around delivery as a key battleground in retail. I'm always saying that time wars are the new price wars for the UK supermarkets. But I was surprised that actually only 92% of the top 50 offered click and collect. To me, that feels like an expectation today. 5 years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe. Let's say 8. 8 years ago, click and collect was pretty much just the Argos model. And now it's become an expectation. I mean, virtually every retailer on the high street offers a click and collect service. And I think it's because it allows shoppers to marry the benefits of buying online, so convenience and assortment, with the ability to collect in store. So I think that's something that we'll see more of if retailers aren't doing it already. And also the point about Asda having a pickup tower in some of their stores and collaborating more generally with other retailers. I mean, Asda in particular, I think, is a great example of this. They've teamed up with a number of pure play e-commerce brands to allow retailers like ASOS, for example, to collect their orders from their stores. I think that's something we'll see a lot more of. I think collaboration, working together in the name of serving your customer will become more important. One last thought around this, I'm conscious of time, is what Amazon's doing in the US, and I'm pretty sure they're probably looking to do the same thing here. One of Amazon's weaknesses is not having a physical presence, both from the point of view of collection of online orders and returns. So in the US, they've teamed up with a department store retailer, Kohl's, where Kohl's shoppers can go in and collect their Amazon orders and return them as well. So it's one step further, one step beyond their collection lockers and actually having a dedicated place in the department store. I could see them looking to team up with a UK retailer, maybe M&S, maybe Debenhams, a department store retailer that's probably struggling to get shoppers through the doors. And this would be a great example of them working together to, again, better serve the customer.
Right, thank you, Nat. A few observations from me. One was about the sort of visual aspect of online selling. So in a previous life, I used to work with lots of big FMCG companies and work with them to sell more stuff through, say, Amazon or Ocado and people like that. And while I think some of the examples we saw of on quite big ticket items, if I'm going to do a grand on a bike or a sofa, I want all the whiz bang visuals and the 360s and the videos. But I remember working with I think it was Heineken. And on Tesco.com, they used to sell through just displaying a multi-pack of beer, 24 cans or whatever, 24 bottles. But when they actually took the trouble to redo all of their photos and have the bottle or the can alongside the multi-pack so shoppers could see what the format was inside, I think sales went up by a third because shoppers can more easily grasp what was actually in that bigger pack. So even on very mundane, low-ticket items, and I'd point you towards, if you go on Tesco.com or Ocado or Amazon and look at any Unilever brand, so even on very small ticket items, Unilever have got a lot of headcount and budget behind making their products come to life and also convey the benefits and scale and pack size and format of each of those products as well. So I could bang on all day, clearly, so I'll just try and pick one more point to go on about. Reviews is another one. I think we're all grown-ups. We realise that in any given product, there's going to be negative and positive appraisals of that product or of the experience. There's at least a dozen retailers that I know who do not publish or refuse to publish negative reviews any sort of negative feedback about the products or about the experience. And I think the warts and all approach has got to be the way forward. So clearly you should weed out anything that's abusive or unsuitable or profane. But please give us an honest warts and all appraisal of the experience of the product. Otherwise, that's the point of reviews is not just the glowing stuff. So I'd exhort any retailers or brand owners to make sure that we get that full picture rather than just weeding out anything negative.
From my point of view, as a marketeer, I'm pretty frustrated with everything that Alex has said there. No offence, Alex, but for me, the marketing activity is only as good as the conversion rate and the AOV of the site. We've got some real challenges in marketing for me, which is the market is becoming more saturated. It's really challenging because of the fact that actually paid media costs are going up and up each year. So the retailers that are not maximising the opportunity to build AOV from a cross-selling and an upselling point of view really resonated quite strongly for me there, because it's much harder to make your ROI campaigns work from a marketing point of view. So that was a big call out for me.
Thank you. Has anybody we've got time for one question before we wrap up. No? Okay. So we're just going to spend 5 minutes, and I'm going to get Headley back up when we get We're going to get Headley back up, and we're going to quickly just have a look at... So this is what the retail's doing now. So some of you have got to do this stuff just to catch up. What should we be doing next? So we're just going to spend 2 minutes just talking about what should we be thinking about next. So, Headley.
Great, thank you very much, John. It's always difficult to future gaze, but have you found that interesting this morning? Yeah? And some of the things feel really obvious, don't they? And you think, why is that a problem? I love Alex's example of the dress with the jeans, and they're really the bleeding obvious, aren't they? It's not a technical challenge, it's not complicated, but it is on somebody's being paid to do a good job, and they're not. So I wanted us to talk about 4 things that that are our bets for you as retailers that should be on your mind. And we write about those in the Scorecard report, so I just want to highlight them. So the first thing is what's going to be important. One is the delivery options. We've already talked about it, but reverse logistics is often a topic which is unconnected with marketing, but I've seen no greater correlation between the ability to return something easily and the conversion rate and the ROI we deliver from the marketing that we do. So there's a correlation between the easier you make it to deliver and the more options you give, the more likely you are to sell. Easy to shop, easy to return, totally correlated. And the other thing is about cross-border commerce. Again, same story, talked about opportunities to sell abroad. A couple of interesting things. For some retailers, over 50% of their sales online are now overseas. And there's a huge opportunity across the 12 English-speaking markets to sell product. And I just came back from China, and there's a couple of interesting statistics. And we know China's a difficult market, and they always say that the only person that makes money in China is Jack Ma from Alibaba. But if you can remember, there's 650 million people still in China yet to go online. Yes? The numbers are astonishing. So if one does think to explore that market, there's a huge growth and opportunity if you can make money. So cross-border trade and making it easy for people to buy through great delivery. The second thing is GDPR. I don't want to bang on about this, but in May, we have a massive change coming, and one's ability to use that data and comply with regulations will be very important. For a lot of retailers, they're now sending e-receipts, yes? So, but the rules around that will change. So there will be winners and losers here, and I think the winners are the people who will work out how to comply and use it in a friendly way to the customer. So it's an opportunity or a threat, which it's up to retailers, it's up to you to choose which one it's going to be. AI, machine learning, all those wonderful buzzwords. The point I want to make here is there is an opportunity to use these technologies to do things which people are having a problem with. So again, some large predictions that over half of customer interactions in e-commerce by 2020 will be automated, chatbots and so forth. So some of the issues around customer service, taking a day to respond to people's returning email is not acceptable, particularly when you can automate it in an intelligent way. And importantly, again, the other thing that we talked a lot about was cross-selling. Cross-selling, merchandising, lots of technologies available which are very cost effective to help people make sensible decisions about products. So again, not really an excuse, and the ability to automate that at a cost effective way is now here, and it will become even more prevalent in the market. So again, advice, use what's in front of us. Learn quickly, because clearly a lot of people aren't bothering to do it. And finally, multi-channel journey. A gentleman asked here about automotive retailing, I think, yes? And for us, what we've seen is that this blurring between online and offline. It's not really online and offline anymore. We all shop. Online is just part of a journey, and in automotive, online is just part of a journey. It's just changed. You kick the tires on a website rather than going to a dealer, perhaps. But the journey will change. But there's an estimated £8 billion of sales lost for retailers who don't join up that journey. And we all know how disconnected it can be. You can go to a store and you have one experience. You go online and you think, is that really the same retailer that I'm shopping with? And so many of those experiences we saw online don't reflect what happens in store. How would retailers really expect to have queues at their till and point of sale? They'd open up more points of sale. They wouldn't have slow checkouts. So again, making it easy and consistent for a customer to be recognized wherever they shop, whenever they shop, we think will continue to be important. It's not fixed, but it needs to be a focus for retailers. So for four of our bets, if it was our money, here's where we would focus our time and energies. Read more about it in the Scorecard report. So I hope you've enjoyed this morning and found it interesting. I'm going to hand back to John. I want to thank my colleagues and everybody at Summit who has worked hard over the last really 9 months to produce, an even better view of online retailing. I think it is an uncompromising and clear comparative view of the state of UK retail. Arguably, some say the most sophisticated market in the world, certainly massively competitive, and many of the initiatives lead the way. But again, I don't think there's anything that we've talked about this morning which is overly complicated. There are still many, many basics to get right, and they can be acted on the minute anybody gets back to the office or finishes reading that report. So I hope you found it interesting. We would love to engage with you and answer your questions and talk in more detail about the things that we've covered this morning. So please feel free to reach out to us after the event in any way that you feel relevant. I'm going to hand back to John, but thank you very much for coming.
So just if you want to get the slides, drop us a quick text. Also, thank you all very much, as Hedley said, for coming. Our retail specialists, so we can have a thank you round of applause for our retail specialist panel. So, and you'll be able to read some follow-up commentary within Retail Week online about the Summit Scorecard. There is some more coffee if you want to hang around, have a chat, ask our analysts any particular questions you were too embarrassed to put your hand up for. But no,